First things first, this top 10 list is of course based off of my own opinions and preferences over the past decade, and yes, for the mathematicians in the audience, it has only been 9 years, 11 months, and 30 days spanning from January 1st of 2010 to January 31st of 2019, so technically it hasn't been a decade, but I think it's close enough to have the word in the title. But beyond that, without a doubt, there have been dozens and dozens of amazing tech products launched during this time frame, and while I can't list all of them, today I'm here to list my top 10 favorite tech that has struck a chord in me from the ages of 9 to now 19, or from the beginning of 2010 to now the end of 2019. But before we continue here, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like on this video and comment as to what has been your favorite tech of this decade, as the algorithm likes that, and it helps my content reach more people. Tech item number 1 is the iPod Touch 4th generation, and I loved and still love this device to death. It was launched at the end of 2010, right around my birthday, so this was my 10th birthday present. And just God, this device is so nostalgic for me. It has the same internals as the iPhone 4, so this was back when Apple really did take this form factor seriously and gave it all the best tech at the time. It is the A4 processor, which is now single core and performs horribly, but at the time it was of course amazing. And it has the Retina display, which is really impressive as of 2010, although it's super small now. And yeah, this was the ultimate gaming, multimedia, video capture, photo taking device for really anybody, including 10-year-olds like myself. And yeah, the front and back facing cameras were really awesome for, taking down pictures of my friends and myself and just, doing little creative things, even though they were stupid back then. I loved this device for playing classic games like Angry Birds and Plants vs. Zombies. It ran iOS 4, so it was really basic back then, not too many features. You didn't even have the notification center at the time that I got this. But with all this said, I think this device was launched during somewhat of a golden age for Apple. The iOS App Store was just flourishing. The games, I think, are the best they'll ever be at this time frame. Scott Forstall was still at Apple. We still get the skeuomorphic designs in iOS here. Steve Jobs was still alive, although he was sadly on his way out at this point. And ultimately, I think anybody from the ages of 15 now to 25 really did appreciate this device for what it offered, especially at the time. Once again, it was on par with the iPhone. It just didn't have all the cellular guts that allowed it to connect to a carrier. Product number 2 is another one from Apple, and don't worry, there are non-Apple products on this list. Once again, I'm basing this list off of my opinions that I've held over the past 10 years, and not gonna lie, I was a pretty hardcore Apple fanboy for the first 5. This device is iPad 2, and although the original iPad was launched in 2010, I think this was the iPad that really was popular. It was refined, it was thinner, it was trimmer, it was nicer to hold, and although the display was not high resolution, which came with the iPad 3, it still was an excellent device. It introduced the A5 processor, which was dual core, so there was a massive performance difference from the A4 and the original iPad to the iPad 2. This device also came in white and launched with iOS 4. Oh, and before I forget to mention, I believe this was the first iPad to introduce the smart cover, which has influenced case designs for years, and it also launched with front and back facing cameras, which have been present on iPads since then. So yeah, I think that iPad 2 really set the precedent as to what iPad would be in the years to come. It really was a refined, slim, trim, and comfortable device to hold, and really did encourage other manufacturers to make tablets of their own. Device number 3 is the Note Edge, or the Note 4 Edge, launched in 2014, and damn, this device was impressive, not only for its specs, including its 2560 by 1600 display, but for its curved or beveled edge. I had never seen anything like that. Samsung has been at the forefront of display tech for years, and just, that was so cool. I thought it was the coolest thing, or coolest feature on a phone at the time, and I would have picked up that phone in a heartbeat if I wasn't 13 or 14 years old with no money. But yeah, although TouchWiz at the time wasn't the best, I mean, it has gotten way better over the years. This phone was just excellent, and it proved that Samsung really was forward thinking, especially now with the Galaxy Fold, which I think is the first real usable folding device, although it's fragile. And yeah, this device really did serve as a preview for the future phones that we'd see from Samsung, like the S6 Edge and the S7 Edge, and then the Samsung Galaxy S8 with its infinity display. Tech item number 4 is the iPhone 4S, and like the iPad 2, it also introduced the A5 processor, which was dual core and at the time very high tech and powerful. It also introduced an 8 megapixel camera to iPhone, and at the time of its launch, I wanted it like nothing else. I remember walking into AT&T in the Apple store just drooling over this phone, and I ended up getting it 2 years later for free from AT&T as my first phone. I actually shared it with my sister, although it was really pretty much mine. But yeah, I love that phone. I loved using it. This phone also introduced Siri, which has come a long way over the years, but this was the first device to implement it. So yeah, during its day, it was a beast of a smartphone. It had the beautiful design introduced introduced with the iPhone 4 and packed the power of the A5 and had a really awesome camera, and really did, like the iPad 2, set a precedent for future iPhones, including the 5 and the 5S after it. Product number 5 is the Samsung Galaxy S8. And I remember seeing this device in person, and I almost switched to it actually from my iPhone 5S. I love and still love the display design of this phone. It really was one of the first to introduce an 18:9 form factor. Although LG beat them to it, I think Samsung really did nail it with the S8. It was beautiful, it was curved, and this phone looked futuristic. And I remember people who had it, I just had to come up to them and take their phone from them and look at it and just admire it. It really was an amazing piece of tech, and still to this day rivals some mid-rangers with its great camera quality and the Snapdragon 835 inside. It's still a great value phone. I recommend still picking it up, even if you're not going to get updates with it, which is kind of a shame, but still, it's an excellent smartphone to this day, and the display tech that it introduced is just so impressive and has defined the industry really. Product number 6 is the iPad Air 2. With the A8X inside, this thing has been a trooper since 2014. It runs iPad OS like a champ. It introduced a design that is still used in the iPad mini, the iPad 10.2 inch, and the iPad Air 3. It is overall an excellent, slim, and powerful device. And I think Apple may have unwittingly or unknowingly future-proofed it with the components inside of it, because it lasted me throughout high school. My school had iPad in its curriculum, and I used it from the end of 2015 to the beginning of 2019 without a hitch. It didn't lag on me. I only had to get it replaced once due to a battery issue, but other than that, it served me very, very well. And like the iPhone 5S, it lasted a really long time due to the processor found inside. And on top of being just 6mm thick, this device also introduced biometrics and laminated displays to the iPad lineup. Products number 7 are the MacBook Pro Retinas, launched from 2012 to 2015 before Apple ruined them in 2016. They had great processors, they had great components, they had great keyboards and displays, and they really were some of the best ultrabooks of this decade. I have a 2014 13-inch one, and it lasted me up until like this year when I upgraded to the 2019 13-inch model, and I still kind of miss it. They still are excellent products and have a lot of longevity, and I still recommend buying them even to this day as budget alternatives to the newer MacBooks. They really are great products and really did set a precedent for the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which made up for the MacBook Pro lineup from 2016 to early 2019. And these really have been go-to laptops over the years for creative professionals and YouTubers like myself. Product number 8 is the OnePlus 7 Pro. This device blew me away this year. The display design is just unreal, and to top everything off, it's 90 Hz. So I think this is possibly the best phone of this year for sure, maybe even one of the best phones of this decade. OnePlus has been one of my favorite companies for a while, and if I wasn't so involved with Apple's services and Final Cut Pro and Mac, I probably would have a OnePlus 7 Pro or a 7T Pro in my pocket at all times. It is just a stellar performer and a beautiful piece of technology, and it really does rival Apple in regard to just overall fluidity and refinement. And I really do hope and think this phone has set a standard or a precedent for future phones to come in regard to UI smoothness and design. The display once again is almost bezel-less. It has an innovative pop-up camera and an awesome under-screen fingerprint sensor, and yeah, ultimately it is one of my favorite pieces of technology of the past 10 years. Every time I use it, it just makes me smile. Product number 9 is the iPhone 10, and let's just be real here, it was the most exciting iPhone since I think like maybe the iPhone 5 or maybe even the iPhone 4. I think it was the most innovative of this decade, and though I'm sick of the notch already, it did set a precedent in regard to screen navigation. We now have gesture-based navigation, even found in Android, which is honestly the best. Apple really did a great job creating a very fluid experience, so much so they convinced me to buy a XS Max a year later. And also, before I forget to mention, iPhone 10 did bring OLED to iPhone, which was a significant upgrade over the previous IPS or LCD displays that had been in those phones for years. And although this phone really did resemble in a lot of ways its iPhone 6, 7, and 8 counterparts, the full screen display really did change things for Apple, and I think brought a lot of people back to the iOS ecosystem. It certainly did for me, and I have been with them ever since. We are now at ISO 5000, so before I have to crank it up even more, the 10th device that has been my favorite of this decade is the iPad Pro 2018. iOS and Android users can agree Apple really did something special with this device, especially after the launch of iPad OS. Apple finally figured it out. People want somewhat of a Mac and iPad hybrid, and this has been it. It works so well with the Apple Pencil 2nd generation, which attaches to the side. It has a great display, which is at 120 Hz, which makes the whole iOS experience beautiful to interact with. And it has been an amazing device for me as a college student and also as a tech YouTuber, because you guys have been so interested in it, and it really did bring a lot of growth to my channel. But beyond that, it's just an amazing device with a very industrial design, a great processor inside. The A12X is so powerful, it rivals some MacBook Pro models, even the 2019 ones. And as I keep saying, I think this device will set a precedent as to what Apple computing will be in the next decade. We might move to more tablet-oriented devices. People might be more prone to ditch laptops in the future in favor of a form factor like iPad Pro, particularly the 12.9-inch one. Beyond that future speculation, this device has been excellent. It has sold really well and has excited me and a lot of you guys too. And that about wraps things up. It has been an amazing decade. Thank you for all of your support. I have grown so much in the past year, and although I can attribute it to my hard work, I could not have done it without you guys. I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like on this video, comment once again as to what your favorite tech was as of this decade, and subscribe for more content like this. Expect some iPad Pro content, some Surface Laptop 3 content, some hopefully soon Motorola Razr content coming soon, and more from me as well, especially in the new year. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will catch you all in the next one.